Struck. I'm the Director of HR for Seed IP Law Group, and as of today, I am the current president of the PSALA. So first I want to thank Michelle, who is on the call as well. Michelle, thank you for a fantastic year, unprecedented year. That, as I was saying earlier, we have survived and thrived in as a group. So thank you for that, Michelle. First, I just want to make sure, hope you all are all hanging in there. There seems to be light at the end of the tunnel, but also it seems like we've arrived at like that very steep uphill part of that tunnel before we get out of this and back to the office. I hope we all lean into what 2021 is tasking us with. And I also hope that you all rely on the PSALA to continue to provide support for whatever is thrown at us over the next few months. Today is our 5th session with Darien Fleming and our 9th session of the PSALA's Wellness, the New Professional Priorities series. Today we welcome back Darien Fleming, and those who have not attended earlier, Darien is an ICF certified coach and trainer. She holds a BA and a JD from Boston College, and she started her career as an attorney at AmLaw 100 firms in the Boston area. Her passion is training attorneys and those of us who support them in critical interpersonal skills and also with determining, setting, and achieving goals. So I hope all of you join me in welcoming Darien.
Thank you, everybody. I'm so glad to be back. Happy April Fool's Day. I thought I'd change up the whole discussion and say, this is what we're going to talk about today. And then I couldn't think of anything funny because I'm not that funny. And so we're just going to proceed as we had planned. We're going to talk about communication styles today. So here's what I want to just do. I want to check in because I have the pleasure of being able to be with you once a month. And last month, I actually got a number of emails after the session about the wheel, the Miller & Miller awareness wheel that we talked about. And I just want to check in if anyone has any questions about the stories they're creating, if anyone has been able to use that tool effectively as they're trying to check that what's going on in their mind and then how they're able to actually communicate in a different way with folks. Has anyone used it and want to share a tale, or I open it up to you? Let me know. Let me know. This is your time. All right. Well, I will always remain on the line after to answer any questions, but we're going to build off of that communication tool today, and let's just get into it. So I'll throw up my screen. So here's the challenge. I'm going to help us really understand why communication has been so difficult in the pandemic. It has been harder, right? Part of it is that we don't get to see each other every day, but also the communication tools that we're using make communication more challenging. And so the tools that we're going to build today are all to help you engage better one-on-one, even in a virtual environment, and to have better conversations with one another. So we're going to talk first about the components of communication, and then we'll really delve into those styles. Okay, so this is going to be both a self-awareness raising exercise. You know how I am about self-awareness. That was sort of our journey in January to grow our self-awareness. We're going to do more of that today. And then we're going to turn the lens, and we're going to focus on what we can observe about others and what those observations tell us about their needs and their wants and their priorities in communication. Because ultimately our goal is to understand what matters to another person so that we can begin to flex to meet that person where they are. So in kindergarten, we learned the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. As we rise as adults, we need to employ the platinum rule, which is treat others the way they want to be treated, okay? So we can't figure out how they want to be treated without the tools we're going to talk about today. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about we're going to talk about personality. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is not personality, okay? It's a piece of personality. I put this picture of the iceberg, okay? Because a personality is made up of our values, our ideas, our hopes, our attitudes, our abilities, all of which are underneath the surface. Until someone tells us their values, and still until someone tells us their hopes, we can't really know it, right? It's underneath the surface. The only thing we can see about someone's personality is what they do and what they say, right? Their verbal and nonverbal communication. So when we talk about communication styles, we're only talking about the observable behavior. So this is not about personality testing. Personality testing is very intense because it gets to all this underlying stuff. We're not talking about underlying stuff. We're talking about surface level, okay? And this is why the surface level is why observation is going to help us, because everything we can see, we don't have to guess, okay? None of what we're going to talk about today is guessing. And here's the beauty of this. Once we know how people typically behave, we can predict how they're likely to behave going forward. And once we know how they're likely to behave, we can start adjusting and being able to meet them where they're at so we can be in better interpersonal communication. That's our goal. So let's just quickly talk about observable behavior. What am I talking about? I'm talking about, does a person speak loudly or softly? Do they have a very slow pace when they speak? Or do they have a fast pace? Right? Are these folks who tend to use their hands? Obviously, I'm a person who uses her hands when she speaks. Or are they very reserved? Right? Almost no affect when they speak. Do they make eye contact? Do they avoid eye contact? Do they have rigid posture? Or are they more loose? This is what I'm going to tell you. When we talk about observable behavior, it's not one or the other, right? We're talking about patterns of behavior on a spectrum. So we're looking for how somebody shows up physically with their voice, with all the things we can observe with our five senses. So there's a professor out of the University of UCLA, and Professor Morabian is his name, and he was studying all of this observable behavior in communication. And he says, there are really three components of communication that's observable behavior. It's what we say, it's how we say it, and it's what we don't really say, okay? It's our verbal, it's our vocal, and it's our visual. Three components of communication: the words we say, the tone, and the body language. Now, here's the interesting thing that he came up with. He said that the words that we focus so much on really compose 7% of what a person understands that we're communicating. 7%. If I've got lawyers on the phone on this Zoom, how much time do we spend wordsmithing? 7% of the overall message comes from the words we actually use. The rest of it, the message that we communicate, comes from our tone and from our body language. 38% from our tone, 55% from our body language. So I told you I would explain why communication is so much harder in this pandemic world. If nearly 90% plus of what we're communicating comes from our tone and our body language, this medium, Zoom, right, makes it really, really hard to read body language. So on my screen right now, I have 3 people. There are 56 people in the call, right? But I can only see 3, and they are giving me good body language because they're good active listeners. But a lot of times, right, we have our videos off, or it's like we're zoning out. We're not going to give somebody our body language. That takes too much time, too much effort, too much energy, right? But 55% of the message we communicate comes through body language. So now we have a better sense of, this is why communicating in the pandemic is so challenging. So let's talk about vocal. That's that 38% of what we communicate. It's your pitch, it's your pace. It's how you use your voice, right? It's called paraverbal communication. And it's how we say something. So the sentence, I didn't say you were stupid can have multiple interpretations depending how we emphasize the word, the tone we use. I didn't say you were stupid suggests somebody else did. I didn't say you were stupid. I thought it, right? Or excuse me, that's the I say. I thought, I didn't say you were stupid. I think you were stupid, but I didn't say it, right? I didn't say you were stupid. I said so-and-so was stupid, right? These are the unsaid things when we're using our emphasis. I didn't say you were stupid. I said you were something else, right? That's what we're intonating. So understand that how we use our tone totally impacts what we're saying to another person. Often when we're talking to someone who doesn't have inflection in their tone, it's actually hard to understand what they're trying to tell us. When they're monotone, I didn't say you were stupid. It's like, are you mad? Are you like, what's happening here? Like, I don't really understand. Are you defending yourself? Like, right? Our tone helps give meaning. So I tell you this because I want you to think about your tone. What are you communicating with your tone? If you want someone to feel safe, right, and trusting you, we use that warm, quiet tone, right? We slow our pace. We quiet our voice. If we want someone to think we are competent, we are going to use our deeper tone of voice. We are going to speak clearly. We are going to have a modular pace, very medium pace, right? We can teach people things about us by our tone. The same is true through our body language, okay? This is 55% of the overall message received right here. So we can make someone feel warm and welcome by leaning in. We can make someone feel like they're not allowed to be here and that we don't want them here by just crossing our arms and putting a scowl on our face, right? That's body language. Ever been in a meeting where someone starts clearing up their notes? They're telling you they're done, right? Ever been in a meeting and someone's like, okay, they have their hands in their lap, they're leaning forward, they're ready, right? They don't have to say anything. Their body language is saying it. Our faces have so much ability to tell us what's happening inside, okay? Our eyes, our smiles or lack thereof. This is why when we're in a mask, it's so hard to tell what's happening there. Are you picking up what I'm setting down? Are you confused? Like, what is happening? If we have really expressive eyes, we might be able to figure it out. But our faces tell so much. Okay. So again, this is why communication in a pandemic is so hard. So you have to be conscious and aware of your own body language and your tone. Okay. And you know, I'm all about intentionality. Okay. If you want someone to know what you're trying to communicate, overemphasize, use words. If someone can't see you smiling, say, I'm smiling under here, or I'm in total agreement, right? Which you might not have had to do before. But because we don't have the same access to our body language in person without masks, you're going to have to do a little bit more in order to let people know what message you're communicating. Any questions about the components of communication? Okay, words matter, but not as much as the other pieces. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about traits, and traits are not to be confused, okay, with observable behavior. Traits are what we think of somebody, the judgment we make about how somebody's personality is once we see the observable behavior. Okay, so we know somebody is approachable, or we think they are, the trait, because they have open arms and they're smiling at us and they have those wide eyes and they speak to us in a way that is warm and welcoming. The trait is approachable. but we're determining that through the observable behavior. Okay, so if you want someone to think something of you, that you have a particular trait, and I'm going to tell you, all of us have things we want people to know about us. Okay, think about the observable behavior, the clues you're giving to people. How do people know that you are intelligent versus arrogant? Right? It's the observable behavior. It's how you say the words, right? What your body language says. So these are the things I want you to be thinking about, because all of this plays in to how we communicate better with other people. Okay, when we're intentional about what we want people to know, we will absolutely have them see that in us. Okay, so communication styles. All of this is based on what we've observed, how people communicate and what they're telling us about themselves. Okay, and we want to understand communication styles because we want to know what other people's needs are, what other people's priorities are in conversation, so that we can meet them and please them, because we want to be better in interpersonal communication. So here are the 4 styles of communication. Okay, we are measuring what someone says and what someone does. Only the observable stuff. This is not about personality. So all of our behaviors we develop over our lifetime, right? And I told you that once we can determine how someone typically behaves, we can then predict how they're likely to behave going forward. And that's going to help us in interpersonal communication, because we're going to lean into the strengths of the style and avoid the stuff that they don't want us to focus on, right? So there was a fellow, Dr. Marston, out of the University of Columbia. He was back in the 1920s. He was studying all of these behaviors, and he said, yes, everybody behaves differently, of course, humans, right? But there are really 4 patterns of typical behavior that people tend to fall in. Now, we all know that when we are talking about generalizations, there's going to be exceptions to every rule. Okay, we know that. But he found that there are really these 4 types. And if you really start looking at someone and you really observe their behavior, they're going to fall into one of these 4 categories that you see on your screen. So what I want you to know is that the communication styles measures only 2 dimensions, okay? Your assertiveness and your responsiveness. So if anyone's taken Myers-Briggs, for example, Myers-Briggs studies 4 different dimensions, okay? This is just 2. Your assertiveness and your responsiveness, and we're going to talk more about that. So the assertiveness scale is the first scale that we're talking about. And this really measures whether somebody asks or someone tells. Okay, so if you think of yourself as someone who is more asking, right, you're going to be more cautious and reserved in sharing your opinion, and you're going to be more inclined to ask questions. Those who are on this side of the spectrum, and remember, it's a spectrum, a continuum, you're going to see yourself as someone who states your opinion, tells and makes statements, okay, declarations. So the way I like to think of this is someone who says, want to go to lunch? Let's go to lunch. Okay, that's the difference. It's the question versus the telling. Okay, it's not about whether you are forceful or anything like that. That goes into deep personality stuff. This is just, do you recognize where people are asking versus telling? Responsiveness is the second dimension. Okay, the second dimension, and here's what we're talking about here. This measures whether someone displays emotion or reserves emotion. Okay, the reserving is the controls, the expresses is someone who expresses emotion readily. Okay, so those who control emotion generally don't have a lot of affect, are not going to be responsive emotionally to what's happening. Those who are expressive are going to emote, You're going to be able to see their joy, their sadness, all of it written on their face, okay? These are the 2 dimensions. Once you understand where you fall on each of the 2 dimensions, you can plot yourself on this grid. So those who are ask assertive and less responsive, not emotive, are going to be in the methodical box. Those who are more tell assertive but don't need to emote are going to be drivers. Those who are tell assertive, much more fast paced, going to give their energy, they're in the expressive. And those who are more ask assertive and emotive are going to be in the lower left-hand corner, affable, okay? Once we understand where we fall, we can understand the needs and priorities that people have in conversation. I'm going to go into depth with this, okay, as to what we learn about each one of these categories. But let's see where you fall, okay? Let's see where you fall. I was able to send a quick assessment for you, but if you haven't had time to do it, no problem. We're going to do it right now. So I want you to think about, are you a person who moves and speaks more slowly? Do you have less energy? Are you slower to make decisions? Right? A little bit more risk adverse, less direct, less emphatic. You don't need to speak as often as, say, me, right? Or are you a person who moves more quickly? You have more energy. You make decisions. You don't mind taking risks. You're more direct. You have inflection in your tone and you like to talk. Where do you fall on that spectrum? Okay, lock that in. Lock that in, okay? Now let's talk about the responsiveness. Where do you fall on this? Are you more risk-oriented? Excuse me, more task-oriented? Do you like structure? Are you data all the time? Give me the facts, don't give me the emotions. Are you a person who limits their facial expressions? Do you not really like to use your hands? Your hands belong in your lap, right? We're talking about control over our emotions versus those who are more focused on relationships, like that sort of free-flowing communication. They're constantly expressing how they feel, right? Super emotive on their face, using their hands, thinking out loud. Where do you fall? Lock it in. Now you can decide where you fall. Those of you who found yourselves to be more ask assertive and more task oriented, less responsive, you're in the methodical box. Those of you who feel like you are less assertive and ask, and you are people who do emote, you're in the affable box. If you think you're like me, super chatty, gonna be telling, right, all sorts of emotions, you're gonna be in the expressive box. And those of you who are not expressive, but are tellers, are gonna be in the driver box. Does this resonate with you? Okay, so you can confirm this. You can confirm this by taking the quick little assessment that I sent in advance of this program, okay? The beauty, however, of this tool is that it's all based on observable behavior. You don't need any tools to do this. It's right there. I just gave you the secret sauce, okay? So what I do want to talk about is some of you probably did have time to take the assessment, the quick assessment, and we've just probably confirmed for you, yeah, I got it right. And your dot location actually says a little bit about you, okay? Because I told you that there's behavioral spectrum. We're not necessarily all the way to one side or all the way to the other. It's like, yeah, I'm kind of. Sometimes I ask, sometimes I tell, right? And so you're a little bit more in the center. Those of you who have a dot, it's going to be in one of the 4 quadrants, okay? But if it's closer to the center, it means you are probably able to relate more to all the other styles, okay? Those of us who have dots further to the outside, okay? We ticked 9 hash marks over and 9 hash marks down. You are going to be a person who probably relates very much to your style, your communication style. And here's what we know. It means that it is harder for you to flex, okay? People whose dots are further on the outside, it's harder to flex. It doesn't mean you can't, okay? We all can flex our behavior. It means it takes more energy. Those whose dots are closer to the center, you're going to be able to flex with ease, okay? You're going to be able to flex with ease. So any questions about where you stand? Now, look, I keep saying this and I keep saying there's nothing. And then there's a chat, which I haven't even focused on. Let's see. Yay, we've got people who are confirming they're expressive. Okay. I took the assessment and answered the question. Yeah. So here's the thing. Communication styles certainly depend on context. Okay. There are people, and here's what I would say. Your dot, Megan, probably, so Megan is saying she was thinking about when she took the assessment that how she shows up at work versus how she shows up personally, okay? And those whose dots are closer to the center are likely to have a different way they communicate at work versus how they communicate personally, okay? Because they shift a little bit more easily. I'm going to tell you right now, I show up the same way at home as I do at work. And my dot is way, way, way far out expressive, 9 and 9 or 8 and 9, you know, something like that. And so for me, I don't have a difference, but you very well might, because you are more able to flex than, let's say, I. Okay. So if that's helpful, some of you might find that you do show up differently and you actually are flexing at work for other people. And what we know is we want you to be flexing because that is what people need. We need you to be able to meet me, your colleague, right, where I'm at. Okay. So great. So let's just go through each one of these, okay, just so we have a better understanding of what each one of these means, what we can learn from them. Okay, so what I want to tell those on the call, anybody taken DISC, D-I-S-C? DISC is a communication tool, very similar to communication styles. You will notice if you've taken DISC that these quadrants are DISC 25 degrees cockeye, right? They move 25 degrees. And so if you have DISC, your methodical is equivalent to a C profile, okay? It's equivalent to a C. Methodical is a C in the DISC profile. So I'll tell you, for those of you who have taken DISC, the equivalent. So this DISC, you have to pay for an assessment, okay? And so this is something we can use for you to understand communication styles without having to spend hundreds of dollars on the DISC assessment. But if you already have that tool, now you're kind of doubling up your information and your self-awareness, right? And it probably all matches if we've done it correctly. Okay, so our methodicals, our C's in DISC, our methodicals and communication styles, these are our ready, aim, fire. We play by the book. This is how we do it. There's a systematic approach. We're organized in our approach. We're going to get the task done. What I need in order to get the task done is all the data. Give me the facts. Don't give me emotional appeal. Okay, I want facts. I will interpret data, and that will be enough. Okay, I'm not going to be super expressive for you. I will need every single piece of information before I make a decision. And you can trust that I will make a wise decision because I care about quality and I care about competence. Okay, those are our methodicals. Our drivers are next. Our drivers, they don't ready, aim, fire. They fire. They are 100% let's go. Let's get it done. Let's get to the bottom line. You do not ask these people, how was your day? Let's talk about the weather, right? They don't want to talk about the weather. They want to get to the bottom line. Okay, they prioritize action. They care a lot about results. So when we talk to drivers, we go in focused. Okay, they are not at all concerned about how people are feeling. They're, let's be, tell stories with one another. No, let's get to the bottom line. Let's get results. I am willing to take charge. I will take charge. And your indecision is going to make me make a decision because I'm happy making decisions as a D. Okay. We move fast. They speak fast because they're all about results. Let's not waste time. Okay. Our expresses are ready, fire, aim, right? They leap before they look. They're super excited to get started, right? Creative problem solvers can have difficulty time focusing. They're enthusiastic. They really prioritize relationships, okay? They're going to be the people who want to talk to you for 10, 15 minutes about the weekend, what they did, what you did, right? They're time wasters because they care about the relationship first. And they're not going to prioritize results. They will jump into action. They're happy to jump into action, okay? But they don't want what our methodicals want. The data, the details, that bogs the expressives down, okay? They're going to be like, oh, well, we don't need to worry about that. We'll get to that later, right? So these are our expressives. And then we have our affables who are just ready. There are team players. They love to preserve the peace. There's no conflict. They do not want conflict. Relationships matter immensely to these folks. So they're constantly building rapport, helping us find common ground. They are dependable. They are conscientious. Okay. They're not going to be people that want to rock the boat. They will avoid controversy. Okay. They like the status quo. We don't need to change anything. Everything's working just fine. Let's just make sure everybody's happy. Okay, so in DISC, those are the S's. I didn't tell you, I'm sorry, I was remiss. The expressives are the I's in DISC, and the drivers are the D. So that one is the same, drivers I and S, okay? So we have this information and it's all very useful, right? For understanding ourselves. And now we understand that, okay, this is how another person might be, right? They're going to be one of these 4 styles because Dr. Marston did this research many, many moons ago. So now I got to figure out, well, how do I figure out where the people I'm working with, where they fall? People reading. We can people read with this tool. So I love StrengthsFinder. I know I probably bring it up every training. It's impossible to people read strengths. I'm an expert in strengths and I can't do it. Okay. I sometimes get it right, but I almost always get it wrong when I try to guess or people read strengths. This tool, because it's all based on observable behavior, we can people read. Okay. And what I want to say is anytime we are putting a label on something, this is not about labeling people and putting them in a box. This is really to help us understand what makes somebody tick, help us understand what they need, help us understand what they prioritize so that we can be better in our communication, not to put someone in a box and label them, okay? So when we're people reading, we go back to basics. We go back to body language. We go back to tone. We go back to our choice of words, okay? So we have the map. Here's the map. I want you to think right now about your boss, okay? So it's either your boss, a key partner. Lock that person into your memory. You've had probably lots and lots of communication with this person over the years. Lock it in. Okay. Is that person more ask assertive or tell assertive? Think about the behavior. Do they speak slowly? Are they less direct? Less emphatic? Do they not talk a lot? Or are they on the other side of the spectrum? Think about it. Lock it in. Now I want you to think about the responsiveness, whether they emote or not, okay? Whether they're emotive or not. If they are not emotive, they're at the top, they're focused on data. They don't really need a lot of facial expressions and enthusiasm in their voice. You're not going to find that. You're going to find that at the bottom. Okay. So we lock them into their style and then we say, okay, now I have to meet you where you're at. And we go back to this information, right? All the things that we know about these people. Okay. So if we have determined that one of our, key clients is, or partners or bosses or whatever, is a driver, you do not get to go in and say all sorts of things about the weekend and try to be in an uber close relationship with them. I don't want that. When you deliver work product for them, put the result up top. Here's the conclusion. If you want to know how I got there, it's underneath here. Okay. If you're dealing with people who are our methodicals, the other box, upper left-hand quadrant, you need to give them every ounce of your thinking. Okay. Here's what I did. Here's the approach that I took. I did A, I did B, I did C, and it resulted in D. Okay. They need to know your process. They want to know the system. They need all the facts in order to make decisions. Okay. If you're dealing with your eyes, you're going to come in and you're going to give the how you do's. Same with the expressives. You're going to do the same thing with your affables. They care about the human relationship. They want to make sure you're okay. So here's your little cheat sheet. Okay. This is your cheat sheet. When you show up to a methodical, you have to show your thought process. You have to be precise. And you have to give them all the evidence. Now, what I'm going to tell you is if you look diagonally across the methodicals and the expressives, the affables and the drivers, if you're dealing with someone in an opposite quadrant, it is the hardest, okay? Because your expressives don't want the data. And if they're talking to a methodical, they're going to come in and say, don't worry about it, it's all good. I know this is going to work because I just feel it, right? It just feels good. It's going to be great. And your methodicals are going to be like, no, I need the proof. I need the data, right? Your affables are going to be like, let's not make any decisions right now. We don't need to rock the boat, right? I want to make sure everybody's okay before we jump in. And your drivers are saying, let's just move. Let's get it done, right? You see the natural tensions? So of course we can all flex. We can. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes intention, and it takes patience, right? But knowing going in to any conversation and meeting people where they're at based on this information is going to set you up for better interpersonal communication. Okay? Going to set you up for better interpersonal communication. So I'm not sure what happened on our screen, but we don't need our screen anymore. So it's beautiful. Thank you for the artwork, whoever it was. Let's stop the share. We'll pull it down. And I am, as always, pretty much right on time. So I want to be available for questions on this because this is, there's a lot of information. I usually take an hour and a half to do this, people. It's 45 seconds, 45 minutes. So let's talk it through. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what's going through your mind. Really? We covered it all?
Okay, I'll jump in.
Yeah, Lori.
Okay, so I've done this with a different kind of assessment.
Yeah.
It was a communication style as well, but it was a really good lesson because I think most of us, when we were raised, you were raised with the motto, treat others as you would have them treat
you.
As you want to be treated, right? So I kind of always communicated like that.
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm definitely expressive. So, but what I found out is a lot of our admin staff probably fall more into the methodical. So I'm sure I overwhelmed them. And that really kind of helped, my head to go, okay, yeah, because I'm kind of loud, I do everything kind of fast. So doing it in this way as well. And I love your cheat sheet as a reminder. So
Good.
I think it's great.
Good. So let me just tell you, Lori, that in law firms, we see a 40% in the methodical category. Okay. So the high percentage of methodicals, and then 30% are drivers. Okay. So we've got a full 70% at the top. Okay.
Yeah.
So the expressives and the affables are a minority. And so if you're erring on the side of caution, sort of how to show up, right, it's going to be less expressive. I'm going to tell you, I have to hold myself back. I read my emails and I delete exclamation points. I allow myself 1 exclamation point per email. But I write it out and there's like hundreds, and then I but
Okay.
is that's part of flexing, right? Because I don't want my clients who are Ds or the drivers of the methodicals to be like, who is this lady, right? What is this? So we have to make those modifications. So I'm glad to know that this was useful to you. And just know that if you're trying to be like, I have no idea, 70% are up on those methodicals and and the drivers. So you might try to meet those people. Good, excellent. Any other thoughts or questions?
So Darien, I have one question. What's your thought about going through this process if you work together on small teams and doing this together?
Brilliant. So here's what we know. People reading can get us pretty far because it is unobservable behavior, but nothing is better than hearing it straight from the person, right? And so I 100% think that it's a wonderful tool to use together. And what I like, because these are all generalizations, I like it when we're in team and we personalize it and we say, I know this says that I don't like this, but I actually am fine with conflict. So I have a lot of my affables will say, I can make a decision, and it's like, well, of course you can make a decision. You have to make decisions all day long. Even though we say these folks, are slow to decision and don't like decision, they will make it. And so we want people to speak it. So yes, Patty, I'm a big fan of that. Anytime we can learn more about who we are as a team, we're going to be able to better communicate, right? And then we can set up rules of behavior. Your expressives are going to want to meet all the time, right? Your methodicals and your drivers are not. Agreeing on the rules of engagement once we have all this information, super great. I mean, that's sort of next leveling it. So if those of you want to be next level, do what Patty suggests. I think it's a great idea.
So here's another question. If you're in a category and you would wish yourself to be in a different one, how can you get yourself there?
So here's what I would say to you. I would say that, a lot of how we show up is innate in us, and we learn it over time. Behavior is modifiable. Okay, we can always modify behavior. It takes great intention, and it takes a lot of time and energy. And so I think that most people have enough energy to flex when we're communicating with another person and it's required of us, but that ultimately in life, we are who we are, right? And if it's getting in our way of success, right? If I showed up as, this crazy, excited person all the time, I probably would be less successful, because people who hire me need data. They need the facts, right? And I can't step over that. So I have to push myself. But I don't push myself when I'm with my friends in my personal life. I show up as I naturally am. Is that at all helpful?
Very helpful.
Okay.
Let's see, we might have another question in the chat. Let me see if we do.
I'm not good at looking at the chat.
Okay, I think we're caught up on our chats.
Great. Great. Oh, there's another question. How can you change the voice tone if innate? Oh, you can change your voice. So I'm changing my voice tone right now. I don't speak in a monotone voice ever. Our tone can 100% be changed. Okay. We can infuse more energy over time, right? We can learn how to do it. And it takes energy to do it. Okay. So the question was, how do you change your innate tone? So Margaret Thatcher, actually, there's great stories about Margaret Thatcher. She changed her tone of her voice over time. And she had a voice coach and all sorts of things. I mean, I don't want to promote that. I would like all of us to show up as we need to show up, right? She was changing to be more authoritative in a man's world, right? But we do change our tone when we're trying to convey something. My competence, right? My deeper tone, my more measured rate suggests that I'm more competent, period. Whether that should be the rules or not, I'm telling you that that's what the research shows, right? So these are the things we have to think about, but you can change your tone. You can't necessarily always change your pitch, okay? A woman's pitch is what a woman's pitch is. We can't necessarily change that, but we can change our modulation and we can change our emphasis. Any other thoughts or questions? All right, you all are brilliant. Thank you for your time and showing up today, as always. It's such a delight for me.
Thank you so much, Darien. I think we all really learned and gained a lot out of your presentation today, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody wants a recording of today's session, please reach out to Melissa at AMI. Her contact information is on the registration email. And also be on the lookout for more upcoming sessions later in April. And Darien will be joining us again in early May. And also for upcoming roundtables. I know the PSALA is going to be presenting on the long-term care payroll tax upcoming and return to office strategies. So everyone stay healthy, stay safe, take care of each other, and we will see you soon. Thanks again, Darien.
Bye, everybody.
Great. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye. Thanks.